Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Catalyst Storieroad series. My name is Philip Gilpin Jr. I'm the CEO and Executive Director here at Catalyst. I'll be working behind the scenes this hour to take your questions. So if you're watching us live on Facebook and YouTube, just put your questions down in the comment section and we'll get to them later on in the hour. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over to our host, Miss Marilyn Suchan.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you all at home for watching. Yesterday in our conversation, we started getting into some different topics about LLCs and different business structures, and I'm really excited today to go over the nitty-gritty of contracts and those sorts of things with our guest, Matt Valentinas. So let me give a quick intro on his background. So Matthew Valentinas is an entertainment lawyer, literary manager, and affiliated literary agent who also serves as a producer on several projects. The bulk of his time is spent representing authors, screenwriters, and investigative journalists working in the nonfiction genre, especially true crime. Matt also specializes in shopping and packaging unique IP that often comes from life story rights or exclusive access to current affairs topics that may be engaged in trials or investigations. Matt has recently started working more in the podcast arena, in addition to placing book and article rights with networks and studios. He's a film school graduate with a law degree that has worked on sets and in acquisitions and business affairs with production companies at major studios. Matt always endeavors to put his clients in the strongest positions to achieve their creative goals and enjoys the challenges of being on the sell side of a very competitive industry. While he loved living in LA, he's happy to be back on the East Coast at least 3 seasons a year. You can reach Matt on Twitter at Matt Valentinas. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. I'll have to shorten that introduction.
There's just so much to say about you.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've always been a big supporter of this festival, and it's always a lot of fun when I attend, and I'm glad to help out any way I can.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. And, you know, we talk a lot about different of the creative side of our industry, but we don't always get into the business side. And a huge part of that business side is for the creators to protect themselves and the people working for them on set with the right contracts and things like that. So I'm excited to get into that nitty gritty with you, even though sometimes it can be very like black and white and not as colorful as the creative side, but we'll do our best today to make it colorful.
Oh, it can get very colorful with some of those big time LA studio attorneys. So
I am sure you've seen all sorts of fun personalities.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
The reason I ended up doing what I'm doing is because I too started on the creative side, and I was working in acquisitions right after film school, and I noticed that in this. Just want to make sure, is my air conditioning too loud? I can turn it off.
No, you sound good to me.
Yeah. And so I started working for a company in business affairs during film school, in acquisitions, and I really noticed that the thing that moved the project along more than the script was the contract. Led me in my senior year of college, while I had a job in the industry, to really sort of, it was a last minute thing applying to law school. But I thought it wouldn't hurt. My track was to be an agent, because at that time, it was the mid-90s, the agencies were the thing, and I was up for William Morris had offered me a good job, and I was at the desk of the president. And at the same time, I had even turned down a job at Miramax, being one of a guy named Harvey Weinstein's assistants. So that was probably a lucky move on my part. And I ended up going to law school back in Boston. And then during my summers, I interned for, wasn't too much law in Boston for entertainment. So, but there were a lot of book publishers and talent agents for books, literary agents. So I found the Palmer and Dodge agency, which turned into the agency I'm at now. It's the Needham and Williams agency, and we're probably the best or the biggest literary agency in New England. So I had been with them going back to 1997. So while in Boston, I was working on the book side, and then in my summers, I would go out and work in LA at the studios on the sort of more film and television side. And I was able to really worked my way up, and after the edge of law school, I could have gone back to being an agent, but that $600 a week, I'm not like the rich kid who can afford to have no money and pay for my car and pay for my insurance, like half the agents that I was competing with, or the junior, I should say. So I had to take a job. I turned down a job being on the desk of Jim Wyatt at William Morris, which probably would have been a great experience, but I took a job at a company called Overseas Film Group First Look Pictures, which was a sales agency who bought a lot of independent films that a lot of the people here listening today might be familiar with, or it's the same type of company. And it's also like an indie production company. So we specialized in indie films and in foreign films, which are, you know, pretty small potatoes, but still a big industry, or indie people look to go to them to raise money from foreign countries. So that was really a great experience, getting into learning how film financing gets done for films, say under $10 million, for people who are looking to sell their rights internationally. And then from there, I went at First Look Pictures, which is still live today. I went to Sony Pictures Entertainment, really on their home entertainment side, which was a lot of fun because that's when DVDs were selling. And there I was also on the international side. And DVDs were really making the most money in the industry. That was, a lot of people didn't realize that DVDs were 80, 70% of the industry. And the studios were just reaping it in because they were only paying 20% out. And they were really just using theatrical as cost covering the production, whereas they reaped all their profits on home entertainment. But eventually, remember one day my boss walked in and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to get this Netflix stock at 6." So that was the first time I'd heard about Netflix. But, and I made a lot of friends rich buying that stock, not myself included. And eventually the DVD industry sort of went away by 2005. And I'd also learned as much as I was going to learn in the industry. And I would be sitting on a, you know, on a lot, just working on studio contracts, but not really helping people get their films made. And that's where my heart lies. This is in the challenge of getting a film made. And I came back to Boston to do corporate law for a while. And then I opened up my own firm I specifically represent mostly writers and authors and life rights owners, and getting their projects sold and packaged to anybody, to studios, to publishers, to television networks. And that's been very successful. So that's sort of my background from my past.
Wow. Yeah, I think for a lot of people, whenever they feel that their path delineates even a little bit from that creative side, that there's no going back. But your story clearly shows that you can take detours and go different ways and find yourself back on that creative side.
Absolutely. And I found myself skipping steps because now as a lawyer, I'm in on meetings that I would never be on if I hadn't been. And now as an executive producer on projects, I'm back to the creative side. So I think the real most important thing is, either if you don't have the money, which most of us don't, at least try and control the rights. Stay attached to a project. There is no lack of talent in the industry. There's no lack of stories. I don't think there's that many stories out there that are that new. It's really having stories that people want, that you can stay attached to, because as I'm sure we'll discuss more as this goes along, most people get kicked off their projects, or they lose their power on their projects as more people get involved.
Yes.
And my job is to make sure that doesn't happen, and that you proceed all the way through, and my clients get the most money and the most control and the most respect that they can get working on a project, and that it sees its way through to completion, while also explaining to clients that, hey, this is, you know, you're kind of being unrealistic. This is the best deal you're going to get. This is kind of how these deals look. Don't be stupid. Take this deal, you know.
Right.
And I feel like I get a lot of reward and enjoyment out of that, whether it's closing a client's, you know, screenplay deal, or selling their first book, or helping them close on financing for an indie film. That's really what I enjoy, and those are the small successes in my career that keep me going.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, maintaining your rights of your creative property. What exactly is a chain of title, and how do creators start to make sure that they're doing that and have that?
Well, the way I describe chain of title is it's like having a deed on your house or the title on your car. It's the same thing. And by chain just means a connection from beginning to end. So they want to see where it comes from. Did it ever break down in the middle somewhere? And did it all connect all the way to you so that you actually have the rights you say you have? And having worked for distributors, really chain of title is one of the last things they ask for, and one of the most important things they ask for before they pay you. Okay, so you've got the film done, it's sitting with your distributor, they've got the master, they've got all the artwork, you've got your festival dates set up, it's ready to go, and it's 30 days behind when they haven't paid you yet, and you're saying, hey, how come I haven't been paid?
Right.
You go, well, we haven't. Did you see that little line that says we don't pay you until we receive chain of title? Now, a lot of times this is used by some shadier distributors to sort of as an excuse not to pay, or at least that used to be the practice. I don't know if it's still going on as bad, but and it can be something as simple as not having the soundtrack rights cleared. It's basically showing that you've had everything cleared in your film, from all the agreements to with the talent, to all the music clearances, to all the insurance. And the chain of title is showing of the copyright from, if it's a book or if it's a screenplay, showing that the book or the screenplay were properly assigned to the production. Because a lot of times these producers, they might option the book themselves, right? Say John producer options a book and he makes a film out of it, but he might not have created a loan out company or a production company that he then assigns the book to. So, and then it's that production company that is going to assign all the material to the distributors. Generally, the distributors like to get all their material from a corporate entity, usually a C corporation, but sometimes LLCs, depending on how big it is. And they like to have everything within that group, and then it's all assigned to them rather than coming from multiple people. So I guess the best way I could describe a chain of title is like through a book. I have a client right now who just financed a film, and he has both the book rights and the life rights. The person recently died, so that sort of makes the life rights ineffective unless there's a state that has more material. And what's interesting about the book rights is the book was written a long time ago, like back in the 30s. So it went through multiple publishers, and the copyright had sort of rested with an old original publisher. And then up until now it's with a major publishing house. But the publishing house has to get the copyright signed off from this small publisher in a foreign country now. And this is going to be, a pretty good sized motion picture that might end up getting picked up worldwide. So recently I had to really go through our chain of title and show the exact dates with the registration of the Library of Congress, when the book was registered, when it was taken over by a new publisher, and then when that publisher optioned it to my client, when my client paid for that option. And then now the rights rest with my client. So those things are very important, and they can get lost in the details, but payments won't happen, and films won't go forward without them.
Yeah. So starting off, for those at home who just have a script at the moment, to start that chain of title, would that be to copyright that script and that concept? And what about when you submit it through the WGA? Does that count for much of anything, or how does that work to begin?
Here's my opinion on the WGA. That is useless, meaningless. It's like a secondary thing, but I think the WGA has you file your scripts really just for them to get extra money, because I know so many screenwriters do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's bad information because it's in so many of those screenwriting books. But really, if a studio or a network or production company wants the rights to your material, they want that filing from the Library of Congress. Okay. That's what matters. And you need to file that before you go out with your project, because if it's not filed before you go out, you do not get damages. So let me say this again. Please file with the Library of Congress. I think $55 online before you send your screenplay anywhere or give it to anyone. This preserves your right to damages. And it's those damages that are going to attract the law firm to represent you if you actually have been infringed, because I see lots of infringement cases. And the problem is the screenwriter has no money to pay the firm. And generally the firm that will take the case on needs about $1 million to argue the case. That's about what their costs are. Okay.
Oof.
So you're not getting that $1 million without the damages to the screenplay. Okay. And you can't argue my film's worth $1 million if you don't have that damages clause enacted. They just won't take it on. Unless you're wealthy and you want to pay out a couple $100,000 up front in retainer fees, they're not going to take the case on.
Wow.
That is really the most important thing. And the WGA does not give you that right. It doesn't give you the same right. Then more importantly, with that WGA, whatever they call it, I think it expires after 5 years and you have to renew and then send in more money. Because there's been situations where I've had clients who didn't file with the Library of Congress, but they did file with the WGA. And then we go back and look for it, and the WGA says, oh, no, that expired. You know, and obviously if you file your copyright with the Library of Congress, I think right now it's your life plus 75 years plus the life of the author. Okay. You won't have any of those problems, whereas the WGA you will. So
So that wouldn't even count, that if it expires, it still doesn't count as a paper trail of sorts to say, but I did at some point submit it.
Yeah, it just complicates things.
Okay.
And it doesn't have any damage, like there's no damages protections offered because of that. You know, it just, the only thing it really shows, it can be like a secondary or a third piece of evidence, but if that's the strongest piece of evidence you're going on, you're not getting anywhere. It's just, you just wasted your time.
Right. Wow. And then going into production, like you said, just holding on to all the paperwork and documentation that shows that you own the property that is that film or TV show.
Yeah, you should really write down like a tracking board of who you got the rights from, when they came to you, and then when you were assigning them to someone else. And you should almost create like a diagram of your own to show, okay, I got the, because sometimes you might buy multiple rights. A lot of times projects will buy all the rights. I've had projects where they're buying the magazine article, they're buying the life rights, and they're buying the book rights. Usually studios will do that once a project gets into production because they want to have everything and they don't want to have to compete.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to show where all those rights are coming from. So that's quite common and very smart to do. And it's also another tactic that I usually do, especially today now with podcasts and digital media coming on board. Really the way, and nonfiction series have really changed the game. So for instance, you can sell a project, you can sell the dramatic rights, you can sell the nonfiction scripted rights, you can sell the documentary rights, you can sell the graphic novel rights, you can sell the book rights, you can sell the podcast rights, you can sell the theater rights. And a lot of times those are sort of chopped up. I try and chop them up as much as possible, so that way my client's getting the most money from the most number of parties. Like for instance, I've had projects where I've sold documentary rights non-scripted to one party, non-scripted television for like a non-fiction series to another, and then dramatic scripted for film and TV to another, right? And that way you get the most money, and projects keep moving along. And now what happened was there was one project where I had been doing that for the last 7 years. And recently it's now come back to where some of those projects have had expired. The options on them have had expired. And now one company wants to buy them all because they want to do this project and they don't want any competition. So I kind of show where all the rights are coming back from, so that they know there's no outlying rights out there that could negatively affect their production. And that's what they want with the chain of title. It's the most important thing that they need to see before they will pay.
Gotcha. But then if creatives are selling all of these rights, are they losing complete control on all aspects?
I like to think so. Not the creatives. I like to think that the entities that would try and buy them from the creatives is what I'm meaning. Right?
Okay.
Generally, a lot of times creatives will be selling rights, all of the rights at once when they don't have to, right? And they can reserve some of these things to keep projects going, because if you put all your eggs in one basket and they're not doing anything with it, you're kind of stuck until that option expires or they buy your stuff. But if you reserve the documentary rights, or if you reserve the graphic novel rights or the podcast rights, and you get some heat with that, and that becomes something, sometimes that lights a fire under the other people who bought your rights to go out and take it out again or do some more with it if they tried and they thought the project was dead. Because so much stuff just gets stuck in development that it's not really the creator's choice or the rights owner's choice. Because once the rights owner options their material, the person that buys it is going to want to bring in their writer, their director, and those people generally have to put their own image and thoughts onto the script, and you're sort of moved farther and farther down the line.
Right. So what are some mistakes? Like in the beginning, you mentioned that some creators will push against the deal and you'll say, no, take the deal. This is as good as it's going to get. What are some of those common pitfalls that you see where creators are like, no, I'm not going to take this deal, but this is the best one for them?
It starts with money, obviously. Money's always first. Some people think that money is money in Hollywood is paid out much higher than it really is, especially on book deals or rights deal. A lot of that money doesn't happen until the film's made. So, the options can actually be pretty low. And people are like, no, I want more money. And I just say, this is the standard rate that, is being paid right now. And they're like, well, that's such a huge, people are surprised how little giant studios or uber rich producers will pay for material. Okay.
Yeah.
And if they pay anything at all, just be happy, because they generally try and get it from you for free. I mean, I have so many people that fall for that are like, well, he's a really big producer though, and he's friends with this actor, and he's gonna, I think I'd rather give it to him for free than try. It's okay. I think he's gonna make it happen. And I'm just like, no. But
wow.
But then the second thing is asking for too much control, really, because you're not going to get any control. That's the second thing you have to realize is, unless you've been in the industry before, unless you already have an existing quote, then really what I advise my clients to do is I say, hey, let's try and build your quote. And your quote is sort of like your paying rate that is verified by all the other studios. So if you're a producer or director or whatever, that's you like to get to a point where you get a quote. And if you have something that they really want, they will come up to industry standard quote prices for an executive producer or a producer, or screenwriter will follow guild lines. But let's say you're not a screenwriter and maybe you're an actor, but you're also a producer on this one. I would do that good producer quote. So this way if you don't get the film made, that quote still exists. So in your next project, now we can say, well, we had this deal with Paramount and my client was going to get paid this much. So now he wants this much, or at least that much. We're not going below that much because that's what he negotiated for last time. That was his quote. And that generally helps things. And I don't know if it's probably illegal or not, but studios know if you ever try and lie in a quote, they know. They call, even if you think they hate the other studio, but they'll have that other quote on their desk in 5 minutes from the other studio. So you can't lie and say, I had a deal with Universal and now I have this deal with, to try and get a better deal with Paramount, because they'll just call up Universal and Universal will be like, no, he didn't. This is what he had. So, so what I think the most important thing is to sort of push for the quote, push for not so much seeing yourself on the red carpet, see yourself through the next step of the project. I think that is the best advice I can give to people, where they're killing deals so early in the stage. And what they don't realize is that as long as a deal is alive and a deal is going through the steps towards production, so many things can change in that deal that other people can become involved. It can switch over to a different company. The budget of the might go up. The shooting date could always get moved forward. So just try and not kill a deal because you're seeing too far down the road, if that makes any steps. I like to say, go for a first down rather than the touchdown, and just be agreeable with people. See if you can, because really they're more than the project, they're finding you. It's not like studios can go out and find 1 million projects tomorrow. They also are trying to find someone who knows what they're doing, is professional, and that they can work with and is not going to cause too many problems. So I'm not saying be a quiet mouse, but know when to negotiate and when not to, and when to just shut up and listen and sort of move the project along.
Right. Because then if, like you said, if they like you and they want to continue working with you, then that next project, you have a little more leverage, right? To then ask for a little more creative control each time and pick away at that.
Of course. And that's sort of like the long-term goal with most of my clients, where I get them to a point, and my most successful ones that have sort of followed this plan, their money's gone up each time, their credits have gone up each time. And the ultimate goal is for them to come to you and ask, okay, now what projects do you have that we might like, rather than pitching it to them. And if they work with you enough, you'll get to that point. But it takes some time, that's all.
Right.
Just about building constructive relationships. Because to me, even more important than the money is finding, because a lot of that money, even if you get the money up on an agreement, most of the projects never happen. So yes, the money's real in the sense that you're able to get that quote, but it's not real in the sense that you never got paid the money. But if you can come out of a relationship with people that you enjoyed working with, whether it's somebody inside the studio or a producer that you can actually work with again, that is going to save you so much time and effort on the next project. That to me is the real goal, is finding people to continuously work with. So I like to have both sides of the deal happy. I'm obviously protecting my client more, but I also don't want my client to upset the other side too much or push them too far, because I want both sides to be happy so that they can work again. And then the more they work together, the more they can trust each other, and the better the relationship gets. Because this ultimately comes down to like a trusting professional working relationship. And in this industry, that's very hard, because we're constantly working with new people and new personalities. And it's almost like we're starting a new company every project we do. And overcoming difficult personalities is probably the hardest thing in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever feel like almost like a matchmaker at times between your clients and the distributors, knowing, oh, I think these will mesh well together?
Peacemaker.
Peacemaker.
Probably, in the sense that I'm there to take the heat from my clients, or maybe to make the heavy asks or the bad asks, and also to sort of tell off the other side when they need to be in place. And And a lot of times I will tell my clients, I will say, the most success I have with my clients, I've told them is when my clients give me the backing to walk away, right? Because they can smell fear on you. And if you're not able to walk away from a deal, they will pick that out from you and get what they want and just chew off any bits of your carcass that they can.
Yeah.
And it's true. But if they really want something, you got to know when to say no, and know when to walk away, but not push it too far. Or if you do push it too far once in a while, so what? Then they were sort of not the right fit for you anyways. But the older and wiser I get, I'm usually able to get to the point where there's a deal. And if I don't, it's because one of the other sides was just too stuck on their position and we're not being realistic.
Yeah. Have you ever had a client then that was so stubborn that you had to drop them because you just couldn't get them a deal with all their needs?
Usually those are clients that only have one project or put too much weight into one project and it's just not getting sold and they're not really seeing what the market is telling them. And at some point you just have to say, look, I can't, this project is dead. It's dead to everyone except you, and you're not seeing that. So I don't know what to tell you. And they get very, they blame it on you or somebody else. But those are usually very amateur people. And I could pretty much pick them out. It's people that can't take criticism or who haven't really worked in the industry for too long. And they just, the first project that they're going to come in with is going to sell. They've never sold anything in their lives. I've had some clients lose jobs because they themselves are too stubborn, usually like with other writers or in a writer's room or something. And there's just really nothing you can do about that either. That's just their personality. But over the years, you try and whittle. My goal, like attorneys, we always tell each other, we want fewer and fewer clients because we're getting better and better clients, right? And we're working with smarter and smarter people. And I like to think that I'm getting myself into that position. So the people that I work with, listen to me enough and I listen to them enough that we get along to a point where those issues don't happen anymore. So it's been a while, but yeah, I've seen that happen, but I'm also able to avoid those situations now much clearer.
Yeah. And I appreciate what you said about that a lot of it comes from creators that only have the one project, because at the festival, a lot of times on our panels, the speakers will say, kill off your darlings. Don't be precious about your material and just keep creating so you have a large body of work to work with, to offer, to sell. So do you think that there's a bit too much where it could be you have too many bodies of work and you need to focus a little more, or just not to?
I've seen that on the other side too. I do have some clients who will be in the middle of talking about one project and then they'll switch over to the other one. And I have to be like, wait a second, are we focusing on this one right now? So I do think you need to sort of go out one project at a time, but you're able to, I think you can go out with 3 or 4 projects a year, new projects. I really think everyone should have 10 projects going, really, to sort of get 1 or 2 to hit. And some, or at least some of them take, generally 4 to 7 to 10 years. So a lot of these are going to take many, many years. So it's okay. You should have many more projects than just one for sure. Absolutely. And usually that one that you love might not be the one that sells. Coming from an acquisitions background, I've been on the other side buying things and the other side selling things. Some of the stuff that's my clients sell that we sell together is usually stuff that I didn't think would be at the higher end of our chance of selling. So now the advice would be, don't argue the market, right? And yes, definitely the 2 types of clients I've had that have made it from beginning to successful did it 2 ways. Either they raised their own funds like significant funds and went out and made a couple films that actually did pretty well and just kind of moved up their careers. So some of them are really major people you would know today, right? And then others are people who just work well together with other people and are always working, especially writers, are always working on other projects, at least 3 or 4 projects at once, have amazing discipline, and do not get too attached to one thing. They love them all, right?
Yeah.
They might have a baby that they're working on, which is our goal 4 or 5 years from now, to go out and maybe get them a TV series. But in the meantime, they're sticking to what's selling for them, and they're sticking in their genres. That's another important thing, is I generally tell clients to be noticed in one genre, whether it's horror, sci-fi, drama, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Stick to that. Don't jump all over the place. Don't jump from comedy to horror to sci-fi, because the areas now are very specialized, and the people that write in those areas, that's all they do. You know,
Right.
So, be really strong and get recognized in one area before you start branching out into other subjects is something I would advise.
Okay.
At least then you're an expert in that area, and you can say, well, I'm an expert in true crime, but now I want to write a thriller. And people are like, okay, that's a logical step. But writing Lifetime romance movies for 5 years, and now you want to write a comedy, that's probably not going to fly.
Yeah. Yeah. And how beneficial do you think it is for people to be following the trades and writing in their genre towards what is currently selling versus just write something that's really good and build up your body of work in your genre that's just really solid writing?
I think it's more important to write something really good in your genre, because I do follow the trades. I've been following them my whole life. But I also think if you follow the trades, you're already 18 months behind, because that material that seems like it's trending in the trades is material that probably sold 3 or 4 years ago or a year and a half ago, and is now finally moving along through different options and purchases and maybe going to pre-production. So that window has closed.
Yeah.
If you're chasing like a certain, it's going to be over by the time you get it out there.
Right.
Unless you have the money for it, unless you're able to bring it to the market within that year, is what I'm saying. That's chasing gimmicks is like a timing thing. If you can do it within that year with your own money, like make a nice, usually like found footage gimmick, right? If you can do that within the time it's still kind of hot with your own money, and you raise $400,000 to $600,000, go for it.
Right.
But if you're actually relying on somebody else to produce it for you, that's going to take 3 or 4 years, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So a great script, I always say, will find a home. I really believe that. And there are so few great scripts. And good script, and don't even look at a good script as a failure if it doesn't get made. If it got you meetings and it got you relationships, it got you an agent or a manager, or it got you your next job, then that script did its job. That's how you have to look at it. If you what you got out of it doesn't just have to be the script got made, but really stick to your strengths and find your narrative voice, because that's what I always look for in my writers, is a narrative voice that is common throughout all their work, that because we're selling the writer just as much as we're selling the story.
Right.
That's what it is. And that's what they're buying too, especially publishers for books. They're more interested in the author than they really are in the book, because they want this author to do well, and they want to do many more books with the author. So they want to see if the author has the chops and has the voice to really continue writing, not just someone can just write a great, thriller, and it could be great, but they might be a one-hit wonder. So that, I would say, stick with finding your voice.
Yeah.
Avoid chasing the gimmicks.
Yeah. Great. And going to books with IP, how important is that for your screenwriters to maybe start with a novel so they have the IP to then go to the screenplay?
I think it's huge. It's why I'm with the agency I am with now. I mean, we're primarily books, and they sort of brought me in to handle more of the film and television rights sales. And if you're looking at most of the sales in the market today, books, they're buying books, and then they're adapting them to screen and television. The spec market is practically dead, right? And even then, when the spec screen play market is you see a sale, it's by someone who's very big and has it's on multiple studio projects. You know, it's very rare that you have an unknown. There might be one or two unknowns who get a horror script or light script in there a year, but at the end of the day, I think those days are pretty much over because the studios are looking at, you know, big stupid IP for comic books and things like that. And even the streamers now are looking more towards books or life rights. And being attached to a book gives you so much more credibility, right? And you don't really have to write the whole screenplay. You can just say, here's the book. If everyone knows what the book is already, that story sort of sells itself. And then you can just write a short little treatment and pitch the book. And it can be different for everyone you pitch. That's the beauty of a book. That's why I've had so many of my clients who were screenwriters. I've had 3 or 4 transition over to becoming authors with books published. And now we're selling those books to TV companies.
Wow.
And TV companies are starting to increasingly look more at books for every type of show than they are for screenplays. So you're seeing a lot more books being written as screenplays. And even most of the books that my clients write, I work traditionally in true crime or life rights, meaning, like, for instance, I represent a client who was a Secret Service agent of JFK. He was there that day. And he's got his book has unique information that's never been told.
Wow.
That's going to disprove a lot of stuff. It's going to change history. Not in we're going to be able to solve who killed JFK, but we're going to be able to solve a few people who didn't, right? And that is the type of material I take on, where we go out with that in a book, and then they can write it any way they want, but he was able to tell his story.
Wow.
And they buy the book, they can make him a consultant, whatever, and they can change it all as they want. Because with a book, if you go in with a screenplay, that screenplay is it's like telling them what they have to make. It's almost offensive, I think, to go into a major producer with a completed screenplay and say, here, make this for me.
Right.
That's what, essentially. And you know, that's ridiculous. When they're paying all the money and they've had 30 or 40 years in the business and they've maybe got a few Oscars on their shelves, you're going to tell them what script they're going to make. No, doesn't work that way. So be smart about it. And having the book gives you, plus a book can stay out there for a while and not get bad. Whereas I think a screenplay, once it's sort of read around town, if it doesn't get on any of these lists or things like that, it can go bad. And people, I know, I used to be a professional script reader. It's almost like, this is a great script, but why isn't it set up somewhere? What's wrong with it? And there's almost like a negativity that comes with it. Well, it's old. Why hasn't it been made yet? Right? That level of thinking. And there's so much fear in the industry that you want to arm the creatives that you're talking to with the best weapons and information and material that they can have to convince their boss that they should make this project. And I think a book does that much easier than a screenplay at the end of the day.
Yeah. So if there's someone watching at home right now who thinks, okay, I may not have time at the moment to write a novel, but there's this novel that I'm super obsessed with, in love with, whatever, and I want to reach out to that author and see if I could have the rights to sell it and make a screenplay for that. Is that something that can happen?
Yes, but then again, this is where the studios and the networks are way ahead of you because they're out buying everything that's coming out. So generally, the average person, it has to be something that's already out. Maybe it's old, like something from the 60s or 70s or 80s. Or it could be something that they love, and it is a good story. But then you're going to have to back that up with how many sales did it get. You know, you're going to have to bring all that information. How successful was the book? Because at the end of the day, they want a bestseller. They want a book that's sold 1 million copies or 500,000 copies, and they want to see that data. They want to know how many people out there have this book. And if there's a book that big, the chances of you getting it are slim because I generally try and, as a literary agent, I try and sell my books before they're even published. I go out 4 to 6 months before they come out, and there's book scouts, and there's studios have people who just, that's their jobs, find books. And, they'll hit me up and say, hey, Matt, what do you have that's good that's coming up? And I'll give them this. And if they like it, they'll buy it before it comes out. And that's generally when the hottest sales get done. But that's not with every book. So what I try and do is, that's why I package rights. That's why I work in nonfiction or life rights, because I can get together with people, whether it's an investigative journal. Like, for instance, I'll give you an idea. Today, Ghislaine Maxwell was just arrested in New Hampshire.
Finally.
Now, I often get people in prisons as my clients. I'm someone who could drive, find out what prison she is, and drive and meet her. I'm going to try and sign her as a client. Now, will I get to her? Probably not. She's she knows publishing, and she's probably more concerned about going to jail. But that's, if you can go out and get somebody who's trying to write like a Hallmark movie or a Lifetime movie, what I would recommend to them is, if there's some big story that's Hallmarky or Lifetime-ish that's getting like the front lines of like a husband kills a wife or a child's missing or something, see if you can contact that family when it happens and get their rights, and then try and team up with a producer who makes Lifetime or Hallmark movies and say, hey, I have these rights to this family that's on the cover of, the New York Times because it's the, Joan Benet Ramsey case of the day, right? Mm-hmm. Suddenly you'll see people will take your phone calls if you're bringing something more to the table. Because if you're just bringing a script to the table, all you're doing is begging people for money. That's what they see you for. They see you as, this person wants money from me, right? Right. You got to bring more value than just, can you give me money? You got to give them something that says, okay, yeah, I'll take this phone call. Yeah, maybe that's a project that we would be interested in. And they might throw some option money at it, and now you now you negotiate to be the screenwriter. Or if they don't say you're the writer, at least you're going to be an executive producer on it. And there you go. You have your first sale, right?
Right.
That's sort of where the market is going today, because or place it somewhere in a magazine. But even I set up a lot of articles for magazines that then we sell the magazine article with the writer. We have a deal. And that's even smarter and faster than a book, because it's usually out faster. You don't have to write as much, and it says pretty much the same thing. And a lot of stuff is sold on a New York or Rolling Stone article. Maybe you can bring if you have an interesting person, or if you have an interesting case in a town or something that is worthy of an article, team up with an investigative journalist and go out that way. Or even more so than trying to sell a book right now is doing your own podcasts. You can do your own podcast. And if you do like a cool 8 or 10 episode podcast, even if it's not super professional, at least that's something they can look at.
Right. And that would be, again, just telling the story that you would option out.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, you would option the film and TV rights to that story, whether it's like a ghost town or the local hunt for their Bigfoot, whatever it is. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. If it's good, someone will option it. But it looks better. Even stuff that I submit on paper, I first submit video first, because video is stuff that comes with video sells so much more than stuff that just comes on paper. So, for instance, I'm selling a show about a dog lawyer, and we put together a nice sizzle reel about what the dog lawyer does, because we want it to be a reality show. You'd be amazed what a dog lawyer does.
I can't wait to learn more.
Exactly, he does a lot. Okay, and there's divorce. He saves dogs' lives. There's couples divorce. Wow. There's a whole bunch of things, and you just can't submit that on paper. You have to show that on video. Whereas maybe 10, 15 years ago, you might have been able to submit that concept on paper.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so people are out there writing their novels, getting all of their materials ready. How do they break the ice with someone like you to start that kind of business relationship?
I like the successful ones. Like, for instance, I just signed a new client this week, and she sent me her material, and she sent me her bio, and her bio was brief. It's about half page to a page. First, tell me who you are. 80% of the submissions I get are just like log line and then a long thing about the story. It's just like they don't even tell me who they are, where they are. They don't know what genre this is. It's just, here, read this. So generally, it's somebody who's really smart and really professional, and that sticks out. And they might have another career, but for instance, the client I hired this week, she's a lawyer, a public defender, and she's writing a thriller. And she's established in her industry as what she does. She's well known in her city. She does a lot for public defense. So right there, that helps me sell her to a publisher. She's been on a lot of TV shows. She's written for different magazines already. So she really thought out about this. She was smart about how she did this, right?
Yeah.
She sort of built her own career first before coming to somebody like me.
Mm-hmm.
Thriller based on her, sort of loosely based on her life experiences, which now I can say to people, here is this person. This is her career. She's pretty serious in her career. Here's the TV shows and magazines she's written. And by the way, this thriller is awesome. And it's based upon something that she actually argues in court every day. She knows what she's talking about, right?
Yeah.
So that would be a way to get an agent or a manager, right? And she went through several steps there, sort of building her own career, right? She got her TV appearances. It's like an actor getting a reel, right? A writer needs to get their magazine articles, their journals, and even writers that aren't. Just yesterday, I was talking to another client. He's like, I want to write for one of these literary journals. Do you think it's a waste of time? He doesn't need to. He's already established. But I'm like, absolutely not. No, let's do it. It's always good to just keep yourself busy with different challenges in your downtime. And those add up. Those show to people that it shows if you love what you're doing. And so many writers think they're writers. But the writers that aren't writers, they don't love it. And the ones that are writers, they love it. They're addicted to it. They do it every day almost. And they just keep writing no matter what. Like, they're going to write. They're not going to stop writing because somebody gave them a rejection or their project didn't get made. They're going to keep writing. They're going to find other avenues to get their stuff out there. And it's all good.
Yeah.
And then for getting a lawyer, I feel people that have never had a lawyer before, and I think this falls on the legal industry's problem, is we really need to train clients how to deal with lawyers, right? How to, because generally lawyers are dealing at a corporate level with someone with inside another company, and you're talking hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on transactions, or it's like your family lawyer you're going to for insurance or some accident. But entertainment lawyers, the bulk of the big firms in LA, they have their major clients who they make their money off of. And then it can be intimidating, though, for somebody just calling up an entertainment lawyer because we're expensive.
Yeah.
And what you should do is at least have $5,000 or $10,000 saved before you even get a lawyer involved. Ask them. Most lawyers will give you like a free consultation, but generally you're going to need 10 or 15 at least retainer to take on a lawyer. But you might not have to get that all at once. Learn to ask your lawyer. Be smart about it. Say, hey, look, come with numbers and ask them if they work. A lot of the stuff I'll do with new people who can't afford lawyers outright is I'll break it down to flat fees. So if you're like a film director and you're making a film and your budget's 400,000. I'll tell you, hey, you're probably going to need $12,000 to $25,000 worth of work here, but we can break this up: pre-production, production, post-production, distribution. So you don't have to pay that all at once. We can also talk about maybe some things that you can do on your own that I won't have to do, depending on how skilled you are as a producer. That's why it really depends on the level of producer, because producers can do a lot of what we do, or at least a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
But the worst is when you're indie filmmakers relying on entertainment lawyers to now be a producer. Sometimes they're asking me like producer questions, and I'm just like, that's for a producer, man. Like, you know, like I'm trying to help you out as much as I can with some advice here, but I'm not a producer. If you want to throw me a producer credit, then that's something we could talk about, and I'll produce your film. But you clearly have no experience producing a film here. You should get somebody who does. So I don't know if that helps, but really just having a plan to talk to the lawyer in a way that is going to be worth the lawyer's time, because the law firm I'm at now, this is why we joined up, because a lot of them left from larger firms, because we want to be able to, you know, we're still expensive, but we're not as expensive as some of the huger firms, because we want to be able to work with talent. But the deal is, this is talent that we want to continue to work with over a long time as they get more successful. So if we cut you a deal on a first project, and I've done this a couple times, I've really reduced rates and worked with some indie people, and they've just been wildly unprofessional, just horrible, and it's just been a big mistake. And generally, you need to convince us that we're going to work with you. We're going to want to work with you again, because that's what we want. We want to bring in clients we work with for the breadth of their career, and maybe we can cut you a break on this first project as much as we can. So your next project, you know, you can start paying more standard rates.
Right.
But don't come to us and be like, hey, I needed that contract yesterday. It's like, dude, I've got, you're not the only client I have. I just cut you a break. Like,
right.
Don't talk to me like this is a movie. You know, some people, get my lawyer on the phone, right? Like,
right. Oh man, dreams. Get my lawyer on the phone.
Yeah, just with like reduced rates. With reduced rates comes reduced delivery time sometimes.
Right.
So, you know, I have other projects too that I also have to attend to, and I can't always get your project done to you the next day.
Yeah. Fair.
And, you know, that's it. With management, I would say, I think the big agencies are going down the drain. I think they're all trying to jump ship as quickly as they can. I think they're selling out their equity. I think like William Morris and CAA are just trying to sell what they can to Wall Street and jump ship. I don't even think agencies today really represent talent. So what we've seen, or they're not developing new talent, let's put it that way. And I think only about 15% of their business is actually talent representation. It's owning MMA, or it's investing in some startup that's going to be the next TikTok. Like, these are the things they're focused on, rather than bringing up some young junior writer, right? So I think there are agents who just know how to agent, and I think what the good thing that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years is, I think a lot of these giant agencies are going to fold, and the people that want to be agents and the ones that have signed the Writers Guild agreement, who aren't going to be producers or managers, they really want to represent agents. I would go to agents who just want to be agents, because I know how many times I'm on the phone, whether acting as a manager or a lawyer, and agents tell me, man, I get it. I want to be a manager. I'm so sick of being an agent. And it's like, oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. While you're the agent on this project that we're going out shopping the show. Dude, did you just say that? Like, it's like your doctor telling you, or your dentist telling you, he doesn't want to be drilling your teeth right now.
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily think you have to go to the big agencies, is what I'm saying. Smart, look at the agencies and with the guild, and go to agencies that just want to represent talent and truly want to be an agent. Because I think so many people go into an agency not knowing that they want to be agents. And in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I think agents knew what they were and they had their place. But I think that all blew apart the late 80s and 90s with what agencies became.
Yeah.
And now agents, you're seeing them all just want to become managers or run their own production companies, right? Or most of them. I mean, there's still some great agents out there. I'm not saying there isn't, but I'm just saying find them. And don't be hip pocketed at CAA or William Morris when you can find some junior agent. Maybe it's a small place, but they're still going to get your stuff in, and give that person a chance. I think we need some new blood in the agency world is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And if you're a writer, stick with your agent, because your agent wants to make it just as much as you do. Be a team. Like, don't just sell out your agent after your first deal. Like, be loyal to your agent as much as your agent's loyal to you. If your agent's working for you, is my advice. Because a lot of the reason why we ended up in this situation is because the biggest, most powerful writers, I think, in the industry also weren't looking out for junior writers and weren't looking out for people trying to break in from a writing standpoint. They were just looking out for themselves. So the people, I think, running the Writers Guild for a long time were just protecting the top 5%. They weren't really thinking about the future of the Writers Guild. And I think that's changing now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are just about at time. So this has been a very fast educational hour for me. Thank you very much for spending time and explaining all of this to us.
Well, thank you. It's been fun, and I look forward to seeing you all in Minnesota.
I know, when we're allowed to be
if that happens.
Reunited. Yeah. Probably not this year, but 2021 looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And everyone at home, stay tuned. We have more webinars coming up next week that we'll be telling you about soon. All right. So take care. Enjoy your weekends.